Have you ever found yourself doing the most random thing, washing dishes, walking your dog, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly they pop into your mind? Again? You didn't invite the thought. You didn't ask for the flashback, yet there they are, like an emotional ghost haunting your mental space. Why does this happen? And more importantly, what does it mean? This video might just change how you see everything. Whether it's someone you dated years ago, someone you never even really got to know, or someone you wish you could forget. If you can't stop thinking about them, there's a deeper reason behind it. And it's not just because you miss them. Today, we're diving into the emotional and psychological reasons behind this kind of mental fixation, why your brain keeps circling back to that one person, and why it's so hard to break the loop. Because here's the truth. Sometimes your mind holds on to people your heart is still confused about. Sometimes you're not in love, you're just unresolved. So before you spiral into late night texts or reading old messages for the 100th time, pause. Let's look at what's really going on beneath the surface. By the end of this video, you'll know whether this person is a lesson, a soulmate, or simply a mirror for something you haven't healed yet. Let's start with what your thoughts are really trying to tell you. Let's be honest, when you can't stop thinking about someone, your first instinct might be to label it as love. After all, that's what the movies taught us, right? If you can't get them off your mind, it must mean something big. Maybe you're meant to be. Maybe it's fate. But here's where things get tricky. Not all intense feelings are love. Some are obsession, some are trauma, and some are just your brain chasing emotional closure it never got. Love is expansive. It feels secure, warm, and grounded even if it's unrequited. It doesn't spin you out. It doesn't hijack your mind at 2 a.m. and leave you feeling like you're losing control. Obsession, on the other hand, is love's darker shadow. It's fueled by anxiety, scarcity, and a craving to resolve something that feels incomplete. And it thrives on uncertainty. You might be stuck in a thought loop, not because this person is the one, but because your brain is trying to make sense of something that never made sense. Maybe there was no closure. Maybe they left too suddenly, or the relationship ended before it ever began. That unfinished feeling becomes addictive, and every time you replay conversations, moments, or memories, your brain is just trying to finish a story it wasn't allowed to finish. The problem? You might confuse that chase for passion, for love, because both obsession and love are intense, but only one gives you peace. And sometimes it's neither love nor obsession, it's projection. You're not really thinking about them. You're thinking about what they represent: validation, attention, comfort, or even the fantasy of who you wanted them to be. You might be holding on to an idealized version of someone who never truly existed, not in the way you needed them to. And that's the part that's hard to admit, because if you realize you've been obsessed with an illusion, it can feel like grief all over again. So how do you tell the difference? Check your body. Love calms the nervous system. Obsession activates it. If your heart races, your stomach drops, or your mind spirals every time you think of them, that's not love. That's dysregulation. That's your nervous system still responding to emotional unpredictability. That's trauma dressed up as romance. Also, ask yourself, do I want them, or do I want the version of me I felt like when I was with them? If it's more about how they made you feel, you might be attached to an emotional state, not a person. That's a huge distinction, because it means the power is still in your hands to find that feeling again without them. Sometimes we obsess because we think there was potential, something unfinished. But potential is not a relationship. Potential is hope. And hope can be dangerous when it keeps you stuck in fantasies instead of truth. The truth is, you deserve clarity. You deserve to love someone who loves you back fully, freely, and without confusion. So if your mind keeps drifting back to someone, take a moment to pause, not to spiral, but to get curious. Is this love? Or is this just your brain trying to solve an emotional equation that has no answer? Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to let go of the people who only exist in your head, not your life. Have you ever noticed how your mind keeps going back to the same moment, the same person, the same conversation over and over again? Even when you're trying to move on, something just won't let you. That's not just heartbreak. That's an unfinished emotional cycle, a powerful psychological loop your brain doesn't know how to exit. Here's how it works. When something ends without resolution, whether it's a breakup, a situationship that fizzled, or even a deep emotional connection that never had a clear beginning or ending, Your brain tags that experience as incomplete, and the mind hates unfinished business. It keeps circling back to the memory, the moment, or the person, because it's trying to complete the story. It's trying to close a door that no one ever properly shut. Emotionally, it's like being left on read, not just by a person, but by life itself. And because you never got the answers, the closure, or the explanation you needed, your brain starts to fill in the blanks. You imagine what they were thinking. You wonder if you said the wrong thing. You replay conversations, fantasize about second chances, and sometimes even rewrite the ending in your head. Because your mind wants completion, even if it has to fabricate it. This isn't weakness, it's human psychology. It's how our brains try to protect us from pain. But the irony is, by trying to make sense of the past, we end up staying stuck in it. Unfinished emotional cycles are sneaky. They disguise themselves as love or longing, but they're really about your mind craving understanding. And the hardest part, you might never get it from the other person. They might never explain why they left, why they changed, or why it ended the way it did. And yet, a part of you clings to the hope that someday they will. That hope becomes the emotional glue that keeps you stuck. You think, if I could just talk to them one more time, or if they just knew how I felt. But often we're not really seeking reconnection. We're seeking relief. Relief from the unknown. Relief from the version of the story that ends with question marks instead of periods. And this cycle doesn't just drain your energy, it keeps you emotionally unavailable. While your heart is tethered to a chapter that hasn't ended properly, it's almost impossible to start writing a new one. You compare new people to someone from your past. You're halfway present in new conversations, but your mind is somewhere else entirely. You're physically moving forward, but emotionally stuck in reverse. So what's the way out? The only way to break an unfinished emotional cycle is to accept that some stories won't have clean endings. Some people won't explain themselves. Some moments will stay messy, and that's okay. Healing doesn't always come from closure. Sometimes healing is the decision to close the chapter yourself. It's not about pretending it didn't matter. It's about reclaiming your energy from a loop that was never yours to solve in the first place. It's about telling your brain, I don't need all the answers to be at peace. Because the moment you stop needing their explanation is the moment you start writing your own. That's when the loop starts to lose power. That's when the thoughts come less often. That's when the weight starts to lift. And slowly but surely, you stop thinking about them. Not because you forced yourself to forget, but because you finally allowed yourself to move on. Sometimes, no matter how much time passes, someone still lingers in your heart like a whisper you can't silence. It's not just emotional. It feels otherworldly, like there's something bigger pulling you toward them, beyond logic, beyond explanation. And maybe you've wondered, what if this isn't just obsession or longing? What if it's a spiritual connection? The truth is, not every bond can be explained by psychology or chemistry. Some connections feel like they're rooted in something deeper. They defy timelines. They don't need years to form. You meet someone, and it's like your soul already knows them. You finish each other's thoughts. The energy between you is electric. And even when they're gone, they still feel close. Not just in memory, but in presence. This is where the idea of spiritual connections comes in. Soul ties, karmic bonds, twin flames, or past life energy. And no, it's not always fantasy. Many people have experienced connections that altered their path, awakened their spirit, or cracked open parts of them they didn't know existed. But here's the thing about spiritual connections. They're not always meant to last. Some of them are meant to trigger you, not stay with you. They come into your life like emotional earthquakes, shaking you awake, forcing you to confront old patterns, wounds, and parts of yourself you've neglected. They might mirror your insecurities, challenge your beliefs, and stretch your capacity for love and forgiveness. And when they leave, it doesn't feel like just a breakup. It feels like a soul-level fracture. That's why it's so hard to let go, because it never felt like just a person. It felt like a purpose. You may feel them in dreams. You might feel their energy out of nowhere. You think of them and suddenly a song plays that reminds you of them. Or you see repeating numbers. Or you keep running into their name. It's easy to believe the universe is trying to tell you something. And maybe it is, but maybe it's not the message you think. What if the connection was never about reuniting, but about awakening? What if they came into your life to help you remember your worth, your voice, your power? What if the spiritual pull you feel isn't a sign to chase them, but a sign to come home to yourself? Because the most powerful spiritual connections don't just bond you to another person. They bring you closer to who you truly are. They act as mirrors, reflecting your light and your shadows. And that mirror can be so intense, it feels like love, but sometimes it's really growth disguised as love. That's why spiritual connections can hurt more than normal ones. Because they go beyond your heart, they touch your soul. But here's the lesson that most people miss. Not every soul that touches yours is meant to walk beside you forever. Some are guides, some are teachers, some are catalysts. Their purpose was never to stay. It was to transform you. So if you can't stop thinking about someone and it feels spiritual, maybe it is. But the question isn't just, what does this connection mean? The real question is, what is it asking me to learn? If you listen closely, you might realize that the lesson isn't about going back. It's about rising higher, healing deeper, loving fuller, becoming who you were always meant to be. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real reason they came into your life in the first place. You're sitting there thinking about them again, randomly, out of nowhere. And for a second, you wonder, what if they're thinking about me too? What if all this energy, this emotional pull, isn't just one-sided? Could it be mutual? Could they be missing you in the exact moment you're thinking of them? It sounds a little out there, right? But hear me out. Emotional energy is powerful. Whether you call it intuition, energetic alignment, or just gut feeling, there are moments when it seems like your hearts are still tethered, like your souls are having a conversation your mouths never did. One of the most common signs they might be thinking about you is random, intense emotional shifts. You're having a normal day, and suddenly you feel anxious, heavy, or nostalgic for no obvious reason. That emotional spike might be yours, or it might be the echo of theirs. Some people call it energetic resonance. Others call it empathic sensitivity. Whatever the label, when you're deeply connected to someone, you can feel when they're pulling on that invisible thread between you. Another sign, unexpected contact. A text, a call, a comment, even a like on your old post out of nowhere. It's usually small, subtle, something they can easily pretend was random, but it almost never is. Often when someone's been thinking about you intensely, they'll reach out in a way that feels safe. A low-risk move to see if you'll respond. It's their way of saying, you're still on my mind, without saying it out loud. Then there are dreams. Vivid, strange, or deeply emotional dreams, where they appear suddenly, sometimes out of context, sometimes exactly as you remember them. And when you wake up, they're all you can think about. Many people believe that our subconscious minds are deeply tuned into energy we can't logically explain. If they've been thinking about you before falling asleep, or even missing you in their own quiet moments, those thoughts can manifest in your dreams like an emotional echo. You may also notice patterns, repeating numbers, hearing their name in the most random places, or encountering symbols that remind you of them again and again. Sure, it could be coincidence, but sometimes it feels like the universe is nudging you, confirming that the connection is still active. And of course, social media leaves subtle clues too. They start viewing your stories again, or they're the first to watch when they hadn't interacted in weeks. Maybe they post something that feels oddly specific, like it could be about you. When someone is thinking about you, they often try to maintain invisible proximity. They may not say anything, but their presence lingers in ways that feel intentional. But here's the key. The strongest sign someone's thinking about you is you, your intuition, your gut, that unexplainable inner knowing that just doesn't go away. You know how they felt when they were in your life. You remember their energy. And if you feel like something's pulling you back toward them, it might be because they're pulling too. Still, a word of caution. Just because they're thinking about you doesn't mean they're ready or right or healed. It's entirely possible for someone to miss you and still not know how to love you. Thinking about someone is easy. Showing up for them is something else entirely. So yes, it's comforting to believe they're thinking about you. And maybe they are. But don't let that stop you from healing, growing, and living. Because when the time is right, if the connection is truly mutual, you won't just feel it. you'll see it in action, not just energy. Until then, take the signs as reminders that your energy matters. You are never forgettable, and you never will be. When your mind keeps circling back to someone over and over, it can feel like you're stuck in a loop. You can't escape. You tell yourself to move on, to stop thinking about them, but the thoughts keep coming late at night, in the quiet moments, when you're trying to focus on anything else. It feels like your brain is hijacked by their memory. But here's the good news. You can break the cycle. It just takes intention, awareness, and consistent steps forward. The first step is recognizing that obsessive thinking isn't just about them. It's about your need for control. When something ends without clarity, your mind becomes obsessed with replaying the story, trying to rewrite it, fix it, or understand it. But clarity doesn't always come from rethinking. It comes from releasing. So when you notice yourself spiraling into another loop, pause. Say out loud, this is my brain trying to protect me from uncertainty. I don't need to solve this right now. That simple interruption can begin to rewire your thinking. Next, take physical action. Obsessive thoughts thrive in stillness. So when you catch yourself overthinking, move your body, go for a walk, clean your space, stretch, dance, shift your energy, because obsessive thinking lives in your nervous system, not just your mind. When your body feels stuck, your thoughts do too. Movement is medicine for both. Then, give your brain something new to focus on. This doesn't mean distraction for the sake of denial. It means redirection. Start a new project. Learn a skill. Volunteer. Call a friend. Give your mind something meaningful to chew on. Something that pulls your attention back to the present. Because the more time you spend in the past, the more you reinforce the emotional imprint of that person. It's time to feed your future. Another powerful tool is writing. Set a timer for 10 minutes and write down everything you want to say to them. But don't send it. This is for you. Let your mind spill. Rage, cry, confess, grieve. Give your emotions a container, because what we don't express, we obsess over. Afterward, rip it up. Burn it safely, if you want. Let it symbolize your decision to stop carrying it around in silence. Now comes the hard part. Stop checking on them. No more profile views. No more rereading texts. No more subtle stalking. Every time you look them up, you're reopening the wound. You're reinforcing the connection energetically, even if they never know. The truth is, healing often requires silence, distance, a boundary with yourself, because your peace matters more than your curiosity. And most importantly, talk to yourself differently. Obsessive thinking often stems from the belief that something is unresolved because you weren't enough, that if you had done something differently, they would have stayed. That belief is poison. It keeps you chained to shame. You have to replace it with truth. I am enough, even if they couldn't see it. Their silence does not define my worth. Affirmations aren't cheesy. They're rewiring tools. Repeat them until your brain starts to believe them. Healing is not about forgetting them. It's about remembering you, who you were before they came in, who you can be now that they're gone. Obsessive thinking is like mental gravity. It pulls you backward. But every time you take one step forward, no matter how small, you weaken its pull. This isn't about being cold or unfeeling. It's about choosing your peace over a fantasy, choosing your future over what could have been. You deserve thoughts that feel like freedom, not prison. And you can get there, one thought at a time. When it comes to letting go of someone, a lot of people confuse two very different things, detachment and suppression. And if you've been trying to heal but still feel stuck, it might be because you're suppressing instead of detaching. Suppression is when you push your feelings down. You avoid thinking about them. You pretend you're fine. You smile on the outside while you're still bleeding on the inside. You distract yourself, drown the emotions, and convince yourself they don't matter anymore. But the truth is, suppressed feelings don't disappear. They just go deeper and they wait for a quiet moment to resurface. That's why sometimes even months later, one small trigger can make you feel everything all over again. That's not weakness. That's unprocessed pain. Detachment, on the other hand, is powerful. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about making peace with what you can't control. Detachment is when you stop chasing closure. You stop expecting explanations. You stop holding on to a version of them that only exists in your imagination. It's when you accept that someone was a part of your journey, but they're not meant to be the whole story. It's important to understand that detachment doesn't happen instantly. It's not a switch. It's a process. It starts when you allow yourself to really feel everything you've been avoiding. You let the sadness come. You acknowledge the anger. You sit with the grief instead of running from it. Because healing doesn't come from denial. It comes from presence. You have to let the emotion move through you before it can move out of you. Suppression delays your healing. It creates emotional numbness. You may look okay on the surface, but underneath there's tension. Detachment, though, creates space. It lets you breathe. It doesn't ask you to stop loving. It asks you to stop clinging. You can still honor the love, the memories, even the pain, but from a distance that protects your peace. So if you've been trying to let go, ask yourself honestly, have you been suppressing or detaching? One keeps you stuck. The other sets you free. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't matter. It means accepting that it did and choosing to move forward anyway. Because peace isn't found in erasing the past. It's found in not letting it control you anymore. There comes a point where the silence between you and someone you once loved becomes almost unbearable. You stare at your phone. You rehearse what you'd say if you did reach out. You wonder if they're waiting for you to break the silence first. Or worse, what if they've already moved on? And that leaves you with one aching question. Should I reach out, or is it time to let go? The answer doesn't come from impulse. It comes from honesty. Before you reach out, ask yourself this: are you hoping for closure, or are you hoping for reconnection? Because the two are very different. Reaching out for clarity can be healthy if it comes from a grounded place. But if you're hoping to reignite something that ended for a reason, you have to be prepared for silence, rejection, or worse, reopening a wound that was just starting to heal. If you're still in a highly emotional space, it might not be the right time. Reaching out from a place of pain usually doesn't lead to healing. It leads to regret. When you text because you miss them in the moment, but not because you've processed what you really need, you risk slipping back into a cycle. Missing someone isn't a reason to restart something. It's just a reminder that you cared, and caring is not the same as compatibility. The right time to reach out is when you no longer need a certain outcome, when your peace won't be shaken by how they respond, or if they don't respond at all. When your intention is clear and clean, not to rekindle, not to manipulate, not to relieve your loneliness, but simply to communicate something with honesty and grace. But if you find yourself constantly checking your phone, analyzing their last message, or losing sleep over what they might say, it's time to let go. Because at some point, holding on becomes more painful than the loss itself. Letting go doesn't mean you don't love them anymore. It means you've chosen to love yourself more. It means you've accepted that even the most powerful connections sometimes have an expiration date. And that doesn't make the bond any less real. It just means the story has finished its chapter in your life. If someone truly wants to be in your life, you won't have to chase clarity. You won't have to wonder if you're bothering them. You won't feel like you're walking on emotional eggshells. Love that's meant to stay shows up. Consistently, willingly, clearly. So if you're asking whether to reach out or let go, check in with your soul. Not your fear, not your loneliness, your truth. What would bring you peace? Not just for the next 5 minutes, but for the long run. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do